Hello and welcome to the Animation Communication podcast, your source for discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please join your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lauren Kizich, the Abbey Roadie, for today's discussion. If you like what you hear, please remember to support by giving a like, a follow, as well as subscribing to the main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube. Spread the word and keep being a part of a great community. This episode contains some mild adult language.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Animation Communications podcast, featuring yours truly, the Abbey Roadie, also known as Lauren, and also with KP, of course. And today we have a very special guest. He is a 3D animator, modeler extraordinaire, and he is also a familiar YouTube personality. So it's really cool. I remember his name circling the interwebs years ago, and so it's really cool to be able to have him on today. Tommy Oliver, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey,
why don't you introduce yourself, Tommy?
My name is Tommy Oliver, not to be confused with legendary hero of Angel Grove, the Green Ranger. So I do a bunch of stuff. I do some illustration, some comic books, some storytelling, but mostly what I'm doing recently is low poly 3D animation, 3D modeling, and doing some game design stuff as well. So I'm kind of always really...
What's a poly?
What's a poly?
Yeah.
So a polygon, as you may have learned in geometry class, is a shape that consists of at least 3 sides. And so in 3D, we use flat polygons assembled in 3-dimensional spaces to simulate 3-dimensional objects. So you can take like 6 squares and arrange them in a way that makes a cube, and then that cube, the computer can calculate those points, which are called vertices, and basically it just connects those vertices to create flat polygons, and then it combines those together to simulate 3D shapes. So you can do something as simple as like a cube, or you can add tons of different vertices and create really complicated shapes like human figures. And that's how, Pixar makes their animations, and Sony makes their video games. It's all based on polygons, so pay attention, math class kids. It could be useful someday.
That's why I don't fall asleep during math class.
Yeah, like me.
It's like playing with Legos, but for adults, right?
I suppose. I mean, you do Legos is kind of you have your...
You already have the
shapes.
Yeah.
You got your long piece and your small piece and your minifig guy. 3D is a little bit more you can use it like that if you wanted to, because it has a bunch of primitives. Usually most modeling programs you can add a sphere and a cube and a lattice or whatever. But the power of 3D is that you can take basic shapes like that and start adding custom geometry to it. You can use with tools like extrusion and insetting and things to basically take the points that are there, add to them, make customized shapes. And so it's kind of like if you could take a Lego brick and then pull out another smaller Lego brick from that Lego brick and make it a custom Lego piece that was totally your own. That's kind of how 3D works. And it's really interesting. It's kind of mind-bending to take something that starts as a cube and then 25 minutes later you have the basic shape of a human figure. It's whoa, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So
I feel.
In case nobody's caught on, our topic is 3D animation today.
Yeah, if you didn't read...
I'll do my best to make it exciting.
Yeah, Tommy's going to do his best. And for those people who are old school horse people, Tommy wasn't an old school horse person back in the day.
Indeed. I was
there
at the dawn of time.
You were there at the high point of whatever.
I was there when Twilight was still a unicorn. I remember those days. Man, they feel like forever ago.
Oh gosh.
Back when Lauren Faust was on the show.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I remember the first BronyCon, no one gave a crap about me, but Tommy had all these fangirls, and he was they were giving him a bunch of rarities.
I don't know if I had fangirls. Let's check the demographics of these conventions.
Read the brony room.
Let's not paint a false picture for the viewers here. There was one girl, and she was the attention of everybody. It was truly a sad display. But yeah, I did my rounds. I got my adoration, I suppose, which was kind of strange. It was the first time, because I had been doing stuff online for years before My Little Pony started, but I never really got into fandom. That was like the first and only time. I never had before, and I never have since. And what do you know? When you make art for things that people actually already care about, you gain followers, and as soon as you stop doing that, they go away again. It's like, wow, supply and demand, business, capitalism. It's like all theory and shit, and it's there. So yeah, I mean, I did my stint there. I got some audience. It was a really good learning experience. I kind of came out of my shell. Believe it or not, I was even cringier than I am now back in the day before horses. I was just like a total mess. I didn't know how to interface with human beings. But being in public and having people run up to you kind of forced you to be like, I guess I need to learn how to communicate. And it was good for my personal development.
If you're so I guess the moral of the story is if you're introverted, then you can just try to be famous on the internet, and then it will eventually stop, right?
Yeah, just like try and do the most extroverted thing possible, which is like slave your way for attention for people you've never even met and put yourself in the public face constantly. The interesting thing is that by doing it on the internet, you can still do it from the comfort of your own room, and it doesn't feel real until you're thrust into a convention. You're like, oh my god, those numbers are people. That's pretty scary. So yeah, it's a very interesting kind of thing. I remember the first panel that I did. There was just like a whole full room of people. I was like, oh no, oh, it's real now. This is strange. So definitely a weird experience.
Yeah, I remember last year, it's funny, it was my first time to BronyCon, so of course it was ironically the last BronyCon ever. That was my first BronyCon. and I remember we were with the Team Fortress 2 Analysis Anarchy team, and we had a meet and greet after, and I'd never been a part of like a meet and greet before. And
it got cray.
It was a 3-hour meet and greet. I shit you not, and I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to censor that part. But it was, and
are we not allowed to curse? Should I be?
We are allowed to.
We are allowed to. We just have to preface the episode with adult language or whatever. Even if we say one word, we just want to make sure the children are protected.
The children are warned. I don't want figures coming to me at conventions saying like, my daughter used to love you, but then you said the F word and now you're banned from our nice Christian household. And I'm just like, oh no, I've been foiled.
Oh no, you said the F word just now. Foiled.
You caught me.
I can see a Christian household not liking the word foiled for some reason.
Foil, as in tinfoil, as in conspiracy, as in...
Aluminum foil reflects God's rays back in the direction they came from, and it's a front to the Lord. I don't know. I grew up in a Christian household, so I know how it goes.
We are a good Christian show that slides every once in a while. But anyway. And by once in a while, I mean it's virtually every show. But anyway. We're good people, I promise you.
Yeah.
But anyway.
BronyCon was fun.
Yeah, BronyCon was fun. 3-hour meet and greet was absolutely crazy. Never expected that in my life ever. But yeah. I
never know anymore because like it's hard to tell if people like me or not based on like whatever bullshit is going around on the internet. So it's kind of fun to mess with people who you know are hesitant, and then you turn out to be a nice person. They're just like, and then they're pleasantly surprised. Mm-hmm. So the thing I did is a lot of people, this is a little off topic, but a lot of people are coming and getting like the old TF2 poster done with a certain member who is not a good person. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw him, I would also take the Sharpie and I'd scribble him out. And I'm like, there, I fixed it. So
perfect.
See what you missed, Tommy?
Oh, trust me, I still have my ear to the ground. I hear things. Grapevine. I know exactly what you're referring to. The interesting thing about the pony stuff was that there was like cliques, there was like sub cliques within like what was already kind of a clique in and of itself. So like, you'd have like really big people that had lots of like an audience, but they would never like interact with each other really in any meaningful way. So, and then like their audiences never really crossed over to a lot of other stuff as well. So you had like the music guys and they had their following, and they didn't follow the analysis guys who had their following. And so it was just like there was very little overlap. So you could be like the star of the show one day, and then the next day, like, nobody would care because they're just there for Wooden Toaster. Even though I don't think Wooden Toaster ever went to a convention, but that was just the first name that came to my mind. Shout out to Wooden Toaster.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if all fandoms work like that. They probably do, but like, again, I don't have any experience, so it was just interesting to like, because I was somebody who just like consumed everything, because like when I get into something, I don't know how to stop.
Yeah, we
So
know that.
I knew all of the people, and I mingled with all of the people, and I tried to like get to know everybody. But it was like, when I'd go to a convention, I would have to like, all right, for the next couple hours, we're going to hang out with this group of people, but they're not going to hang out with my other friends. So I'm going to have to leave, hang out with these people. And it was just like constantly running around trying to make sure I talk to everybody. And it's like, this is dumb. Let's all just get pizza.
The moral of the story is do projects that inquire or that need to everyone to do things like you need, and then you try to not die while doing them. But then eventually people meet each other that might not cross over normally. Like video editors and artists and stuff like that probably wouldn't cross over normally until you push them in a room and I force them together, and now they're friends, and yay, I did it. So, but yeah, fandom is weird. Anyway, Lauren, what's the news? Tell me.
Aha. Yes. What is the sitch this week? So, got three little headlines here. First of all, we've mentioned it on the podcast before, but now it's like literally within the week, and probably by the time this episode airs, it'll be the week after. But anyway, the long-awaited Animal Crackers movie is dropping on Netflix on July 24th, and for those of you who need a little refresher, Animal Crackers was a movie that was directed by Tony Bancroft, who directed Mulan for Disney, and he and his twin brother Tom were both Bancroft brothers who animated at Disney, and are extremely talented, nice folks. But this movie was notorious for its basically its distribution hell. Because it was released in other countries, like it was like China, maybe like one or two other countries, something like that. But when it came time to try and release it in the US and other countries, it never made it, and the distributor was very messed up, so to speak. So it took a long time, and now it's finally got a deal with Netflix, and it's coming out real soon. So yay! So that's happening, and then second of all, we had an announcement for season 3 of Agretsuko. If you haven't watched Agretsuko, highly recommend it. It's Hello Kitty for adults.
It's fantastic.
It's absolutely wonderful. And I'm really excited for season 3. So, I mean, I personally loved season 2. I know some people had some gripes about season 2, but I personally loved it. So I love all the characters. I love the storylines. So I'm really excited to see where it'll go for season 3. And then finally, we also have the new voice actress that was announced for Minnie Mouse after Russie Taylor passed away last year. And she, was like, I think it was like for over 30 years, Russie Taylor was the voice of Minnie Mouse, and her husband was originally the voice of Mickey as well. So they worked together.
That's adorable.
Yeah, they were couple goals. But yeah, so they announced that Caitlin Roebuck is going to be, I hope I pronounced her name right, I'm sorry. She is the new official voice for Minnie Mouse, and now she has done Minnie's voice in other like Disney parks and resort stuff, and she's done it for various instances in Disney TV animation. She's also been a voice actress for Warner Brothers Animation and Marvel projects, so it's really cool that she's officially stepped into the role as the official voice for Minnie Mouse. And that was announced, not really so much announced as revealed in the credits of the latest episode of Mickey Mouse Mixed Up Adventures. So I thought that was pretty cool that it was kind of that surprise announcement. And I think I thought it was a good positive headline.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, those are career goals. You never have to do anything again.
Yeah.
Because you can just be Minnie Mouse.
It's just like Bill Farmer being goofy. I can't imagine anybody else being goofy, because he's goofy in literally everything and has been for 30-something years at least.
He's so pure. He's such a, he seems like such a nice guy. Like, sometimes when I'm bored and I need something to do before I lost Disney Plus, and I'm probably going to borrow Lauren's Disney Plus eventually. But anyway, my brother has, like, the majority of stuff I have access to anyway, so it's not that big of a deal, except for, like, the original programming. So we were like, my mom's like watching the news, and I'm like, I can't news anymore, like, because it's just like it's politics or it's coronavirus, and it's always those two things over and over and over and over. You guys know. So I was just like, let's watch the nice show with Bill Farmer and the doggos. So I think it's called It's a Dog's Life or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's cute, and he's like so nice, and I'm just glad that they're showing appreciation for someone who's, not that they don't normally, but like he's getting to do some on-camera work as himself versus just Goofy all the time, and no one, like, who does Goofy? I don't know, like, I don't know where he's hiding. So, you know, and like the credits or the opening sequence is really cute, like the art style is great. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to mention before we actually go into breaking down what is a 3D and what is a polygon, is I started watching Close Enough, which is like regular show, but not really. I think it's in the same universe. I think that's been confirmed, but it's I like it so far. It's more adult, so which you can do when you're doing a streaming service, but it's still made by Cartoon Network Studios, so it's a little bit different. They say bad words in it, but I don't know. I like it. Would recommend if you like kind of meta humor and you're slowly approaching your 30s in vain. Tommy, are you old? Like, are you 30?
Oh, unfortunately. Every year I realize I'm probably not going to be able to get a robot body and become a transhuman. I'm probably going to die before it happens. It makes me sad.
You can
It's the worst.
You can be like one of those Futurama heads where we just put your head in a jar.
I mean, unironically, do it. My brain's the only thing that matters. Just hook it up to nanomachines or something. Keep my brain alive until the robot bodies come. I'm down. Yeah, I've always liked J.G. Quiddel's writing and stuff. His stuff on regular show is really good. So now that Close Enough is finally out, I definitely want to check it out. But like I said, I have an aversion to streaming services because there's too many now, and like paradox of choice. I'm just like, which one do I pay for? All of them? What about none of them? And then I go find it. Don't torrent, kids. It's bad.
I mean, like, we can't stop you either, I guess, if you're already doing it. But you know,
I've never torrented in my life.
You were raised in a good Christian household, right?
Exactly. You don't listen to the Dark Lord and go to the dark web. You just don't do it.
I always laugh at the name Dark Web. Like, it's just it just sounds like a sci-fi, like the bad name for like a sci-fi bad guy like hangout, just like the Dark Web.
The cursor is Darth Vader. You know?
Gotta make a late night internet cafe called the Dark Web. I'd hang out there.
It's like that name's terrible. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. That one's for free. People with actual money to start businesses. That one's a freebie.
Just for you. I was also going to add too that if you're in LA, Close Enough is based in LA, so they do LA things, and I'm like, haha, I get it now. The most obvious one that I've seen so far is there's a scene where they build a like a motorcycle jumpy thingy, like with fire, like a ramp, on
like an Evel Knievel kind of thing.
Yeah, on the observatory.
Oh, at Griffith Park Observatory.
Yeah. Yeah, and everything's right, like even the Hollywood sign is in the right place from the view up there. So I was just like, haha, I know where that place is, but you know, they say LA continually in it, so it's definitely supposed to be based there. So if you're like, that's one of the things I like about being there when I'm actually there, is I get those jokes, and like a lot of times I'm more aware of like, oh, they mean Burbank because they put it on the map, and oh, I know that's the Warner Brothers lot, and like that's where the Animaniacs live, you know, stuff like that.
Exactly.
Have you ever been to
this day, every time?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, to this day, anytime I pass the Warner Brothers studios, I look up at that water tower and I'm like, one of these days they're gonna burst right out. The Animaniacs will be back, and actually, they're supposed to be on Hulu in the coming future, so Yes.
I don't know. I think they've been working on the Animaniacs reboot for like ever now, so it's probably in development hell. I think they're just afraid that the millennials are going to trash it because they do something wrong, so they just keep on redesigning everything, you know?
Well, I do remember there were some screenshots from like a composer's room showing that had like a screenshot from one of the episodes that's coming up. So as far as I know, it's like they're keeping to like relatively the original the character designs, maybe updating them a little bit in terms of like art style, but not hugely different. And they did bring back the entire voice cast, the original ones, to be back for the show, and then they brought back a lot of writers, and so I mean it's gonna be whatever it's gonna be the 21st century take on Animaniacs, so we'll see. I mean, there's a lot they could run with it, and because they had a lot to run with in the 90s. But no, I think it's still very much in production, but or at least maybe near the end of season. I don't know if maybe they've already completed season 1 and I'm just talking out of my butt. I don't know. But but I do know I've seen like, storyboard artists kind of talking and like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna doodle some Animaniacs, and like we already know you're working on the show, so it's not like your drawings are out of the blue.
I see you.
I see you.
But I think that like with all coronavirus headlines, things are kind of slow lately. So I hope you guys like binging stuff you've already seen before, or get HBO Max so you can watch some new Looney Tunes stuff done in Flash, because I heard that's pretty jammin'. Or Animal Crackers or whatever. Or if you'd like to steal Lauren's all of Lauren's subscriptions, you can go to like www.laurenstuff.com. I don't know. Okay. So Lauren ask the questions. What other questions?
Okay, so I mean, this may sound like just a really general question, but as there are a lot of people who are new in the audience, I mean, you kind of walk through polygons and different faces on a shape and all that, but what specifically do you do as a computer animator? Like, what are your strengths in computer animation right now?
Also, follow-up question: do you actually have to do math? Because that scares me.
Okay, so I kind of am trying to become like an indie one-man band kind of guy, because I'm just like obsessed with being an autodidact, which just means like you do everything. At least that's what the internet told me.
Good luck with that.
I've never bothered looking it up because I guess looking up definitions for words I've heard online is not part of my desired autodidact skill. But so I've done. I would say probably my biggest interest is character modeling. I really like the idea of realizing like character designs in 3 dimensions. I started doing illustration like all the way through middle school, and I went to college for it and stuff. And I never was really able to click with it because I understood the form of the character, but in terms of like drawing the form in space was very difficult. Like foreshortening and stuff never seemed to click with me, no matter how many tutorials I watched or how many like quick tricks I would look up on the internet. It just never worked. I knew how the character was formed, I just didn't know how to draw it that way. So 3D takes care of that for you because it's a 3-dimensional shape. It does all the perspective and stuff
right
by its very nature. So I could just focus on the form, which was what I kind of could mentally envision anyway. So that was like a really big breakthrough in terms of like being able to better translate my ideas into like a form that people can enjoy, as opposed to being trapped in my head all the time. So I've done character design is a really big thing. I guess like if you were going to break it down in terms of like what industry says like different jobs, there's modeling, there's texturing, which is where you take the shape and then you basically put extra detail on there, like the colors and like what the clothes are and like what the skin tones look like and things like that. It's basically a way of adding more detail and making it look more lifelike. Then you have rigging, which is when you make a digital skeleton that is what controls the actual animation of the character. Because a lot of times people compare 3D to 2D animation, but like 3D is really just digital puppetry, because that's what you're doing. You're basically making an armature, a digital armature, and then your 3D model is the puppet that armature controls. And then animating is just like moving that around like you would, like in a Tim Burton movie or something, how they move that armature around from, frame to frame. The nice thing about computers is they can do interpolation. So instead of having to, like, if you're making a guy wave, if you're doing it in stop motion, you have to move it every single frame manually.
Mm-hmm.
In 3D, computers can automatically key in all the in-betweens of like a wave. So you can set like the start and the end of the wave, and the computer will know how to animate in between them. So it's kind of a time saver in that way. So I've done a little bit of rigging. I've done a little bit of animation, which is definitely the hardest part because it's animation. And what else do I need to say?
Animation is hard.
It's incredibly difficult. It's a totally different beast in 3D. Because again, you're doing more puppetry than you are like representing form with drawings, like a sequence of drawings. So it works a bit better to my strengths, just as like how my brain works. So I've barely done any 2D animation just because my brain was just like, I can barely draw one picture in perspective. You want me to do 15 a second? Like, no, I'm out. So this is a little bit more manageable. So I've done a little bit of animation stuff. And now I'm starting to kind of also get into like game design and use my 3D models, either exporting them as sprites, which are just like 2D video game graphics, or even trying to do 3D stuff. So another thing I'm actually doing that I just started doing a week ago is 3D printing. So this is what's great about 3D modeling, is that it's like very flexible. You can use it for animation, you can use it for games, you can use it for 3D printing. So I've been printing like test prints of trying to like take my models and make them physical objects and stuff. So
yeah,
it's very flexible. But I was going to pick one thing. It's character modeling. I'm really interested in designing characters, animating them, bring them to life. That's the thing. Characters are cool. Backgrounds, even 3D, are still boring.
That's like me as a 2D, like I'm a character designer, and in terms of 2D animation that I've done, my strengths are extremely very much in character versus like elements or drawing backgrounds or anything like that. So I totally feel that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I envy environment artists who can just like envision an entire space, but like,
oh, absolutely.
Like my brain just puts a blur on all of that. Like I can play like a video game and like a half an hour later I'll be like, where did that level even take place? I don't even pay attention to backgrounds. I'm just focused on all the characters. It's just where my brain goes. So.
Oh my god, yeah, that's a mood. Yeah, I think that's just a general thing, and like for animators, like everyone wants to be the animator. Everyone wants to work with the characters because the characters usually are more fun than doing backgrounds because everyone's just like, still life is boring. I like the shapes of people. So I guess you got to do a little bit of both. But yeah, I don't know. That's just something I noticed. But I guess my strengths are I like animating traditionally, which is boring, and people are like, "What?" But I don't know. I like working with my hands. That's what she said, essentially. So, versus like doing something on my tablet or my computer. Like I'm trying to update my portfolio whenever this fucking plague is over, essentially. But like every time I look at my tablet, I cry. So like everything I've had to work on for the team, I've been doing it on paper and sending screenshots to people, which is like bad, but it gets so much easier. Like that's why in the loopy thing, Lauren's working on a tablet and I'm not. I'm working with a pencil because I'm old school. Anyway, I'm old. That's the end of the story.
I mean, as an almost boomer myself, I guess I technically am a boomer now. God. Yeah, almost all of my work starts with pencil and paper. Like even when I'm doing a 3D model, usually you'll have a reference image you're working off of, and I'll always sketch it out on paper. I don't know. I'm just more comfortable working with pencil and paper, probably because that's what I was drawing all through middle school. Because back in my day, we didn't have good internet, so like, we just had to like draw on paper and stuff. So it's just more comforting. I feel like I have more control. Like unless you have like $3,000 to draw up on like the most expensive Wacom tablet, like drawing on glass definitely feels different than like the resistance of paper.
Oh yeah.
So like it's like a different feeling of control when you're using the pencil. So it feels a lot more natural. Also, I spam Control Z when I draw digitally. So drawing traditionally, you got to commit to stuff a little bit more. You kind of work around your mistakes and integrate them into the design as opposed to just constantly like, I got to get the perfect line. You Control Z it like 400 times. Like you can't do that. So you kind of like force you to just keep going. So for concept art and stuff, I really like working in a sketchbook.
Yeah. And so yeah, to all listeners, yeah, drawing is still important even in 3D. I mean, everything starts pretty much as a drawing. It's an idea that you put down on paper. Here's a visualization, and then how do we carry that to 3D? That's when you look at turnarounds that are usually done as drawings, and then you do a 3D model based off of that. So it's like, yeah, everything starts with drawings. So don't think that 3D animators, like, they say you don't have to draw. It's like, no, it's important to know to draw because you want to be able to understand from a design aspect and a construction aspect how that works as a, and you want to make sure something translates well from 2D to 3D. You need to understand the 2D stuff. So
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
I think.
I mean,
Go ahead, Tommy.
I was just gonna say, like, all my designs usually start as 2D, but like again, I'm not great at 2D. So when they start going to 3D, changes happen. Like
mhm.
when something is in a 3D space, it's like, oh, that actually wouldn't work the way I thought it would in 2D. Or like now that I don't have to like work around my lack of great drawing ability, I can take the implied detail and really flesh it out and make it better. But like, there's always a place to start. I know a lot of 3D artists who generally just work off of other artists' pieces. Like they'll find a 2D piece they like and translate it into 3D.
Mhm.
So like you can like do the technical side of 3D without having to do a lot of drawing, but it opens up, way more possibilities if you can get your ideas on paper and then into the computer as opposed to having to source someone else's ideas. So
Yeah.
it's worth knowing even on a rudimentary level, just as a springing off point.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll just mention before we get into more detailed discussion. If you're new, I guess for some reason, welcome to the new people. We're kind of in the intermediate stage of term discussion. So if you're like, what's a keyframe? You know, like what is what is rigging? That kind of stuff. What is perspective? Then I think the episodes for you are character design with Steven Silver, and then we do an art for basics where I touch on basic animation principles essentially. So if you think we're speaking Spanish to you, I'm sorry, but then you can just listen to those ones and then come back and then like gain a better perspective. But like that's kind of the idea of the podcast. That's kind of the idea of the podcast is we do the basic stuff and then we build on that depending on what we're talking about. Um but yeah. Um I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I know you're in game design right now, and what originally piqued your interest in 3D animation, especially into translating it into video game design?
Well, I mean, what really got me started doing 3D was first just the frustration of not being able to draw perspective very well because I wanted to tell stories. And part of like any good story in terms of animation, I feel, is like, like your camera work, your quote unquote camera work, the way you like present things, that really affects the mood and stuff like that. So if you want to do some high energy action, having some crazy foreshortening where like the hands like really big and it has like emphasizes the action and the body kind of recedes in space and stuff, really this like dynamic staging was integral to like how my mind's eye was thinking of these ideas, and I couldn't translate them onto the paper in drawings. So 3D just seemed to be the natural next step to go. And I decided to go with low poly because I'm old and I grew up with the PlayStation 2, and that aesthetic is like quintessential 3D art to me. It was a great way of you doing a lot with a little, because like the PS2 was not a very powerful piece of hardware. So it couldn't do photorealistic stuff like we take for granted now. Like you had to really be creative with how you represented forms. And a lot of the non-photorealistic games on the PS2 still look really good. Like you look at Ratchet and Clank or Jack and Daxter and stuff like that, and they're gorgeous, like to this day.
Oh yeah.
So I really liked the idea of kind of doing a lot with a little like that. Because I'm a one person guy, I don't have a bunch of team to like throw this stuff off to. And I watched like a tutorial that someone made about like how to model a low poly character, and they were like, "Yeah, low poly is just like the lazy person's approach to modeling." I'm like, "Sold, done. That's all you need to say. I'm in it. Let's do it. Like that. You're speaking my language now. I'm lazy. Let's make it happen." So from that point, it was just really focusing primarily on low poly, just because it'll run on any computer. It doesn't require a lot of hardware. It doesn't require a ton of work. You know, it's I mean, it's still very time intensive, but in terms of like, you're not sitting there like, oh god, I got to figure out how to get all these characters' pores accurately represented on their face. It's it lets you kind of focus more on the macro stuff, which is what I was interested in the storytelling and the character design, stuff like that. You don't get bogged down into like, I gotta paint these normal maps and stuff on my characters today. It's just like really kind of like grindy stuff that if you're a technical artist, that's really interesting. But I'm not super technical in terms of like the technology is a tool to get to the end goal of telling the story. Not so much like I'm not jonesing on the tech in and of itself for the most part. And so I think there's definitely two different ways of thinking of it. I think people who work like in the industry for studios and stuff, technical artists are a great fit for that because they just want to like get the toys and play with them and make the best things possible. And like somebody telling them what to do is a great fit because they just want an excuse to make these things, whatever they are. Because they want to I want to push more polys. I want to get realistic hair simulation. I want to, have realistic snow and water effects that are just like require a crazy amount of computations I could never do on my computer at home or something like that. If that's what gets you excited, you'll work great in a studio setting because like they need tons of people to do those kinds of things. But if you're someone like me who's much more interested in telling a story and creating characters, getting bogged down in a realistic water simulation is really not going to help the story be told any better. So moving to something like low poly and non-photorealistic art style lets those details be implied instead of directly rendered, so the greater picture can come into focus more quickly.
Then meanwhile, Final Fantasy be like...
Yeah, and then you have Square Enix, who's just like, how many billions of dollars are going to spend on a proprietary rendering engine this year? It's just like, come on, guys. It's fine.
It's like
your two most widely acclaimed games in the last decade are Octopath Traveler and Bravely Default. Two simple games made for handhelds. You fools. You utter buffoons. You've been bamboozled by your own hubris. Just make simple games. That's what everybody wants.
Have you seen Flappy Bird?
Oh, that made $1 bazillion.
Exactly. Even Angry Birds had a movie made after it. 2 of them.
They had 2!
2 of them.
They had 2!
Which actually, I still have yet to watch the second one, and yet I've heard the second one is actually better than the first, so there you go.
It's very strange that we live in a world where 2 Angry Birds movies exist, and they're probably the best video game adaptations that have come out. It's just like, you have all these great narrative-driven games.
Sonic.
I guess Sonic was pretty good too.
Sonic was fun. I'm like, it was actually.
I want Knuckles to be in the next one.
And I've seen people trying to petition to get The Rock to be the voice of Knuckles, and I'm like, actually though, it would work.
That'd be pretty funny.
But yeah. I was gonna say,
I'd be for that.
So, sorry, I'm blanking here. Sorry, end of the day here.
It's all
good. So as you've been working and developing in character animation, character modeling, what was your most difficult or challenging project that you've done, or is there any project that you have in mind that you aim to do, or at some point would like to be a part of? I'm not sure. So, just tell us a little about that.
Sure. Actually, before I do that, I just want to make a quick note, because KP, you asked, is there actually math involved in 3D? There doesn't need to be.
Oh yeah, he remembered.
I did, somehow I did remember that. There doesn't have to be. Most of the time, I don't use math in actual 3D, but like if you get into stuff like shader editing and stuff, whereas like you kind of like make custom ways that like light and stuff interacts, and like lots of people do crazy stuff with the shaders. Like, oh, I just like have this shader that just procedurally makes fire and it animates fire, and I don't have to like actually go and hand animate it. I've just put all these like coding and math, and the computer does it for me. Like, that's like the real power of 3D. I can't do it because I'm just like 5 + 5 is like where I tap out, guys. Okay, like all this crazy stuff you're doing to like
let me
the computer.
Let me go on a rant about how bad I am at math. Okay, so I mean, I'm one of those people that like I could probably be smart. I'm smart. I'm putting myself down. I probably could be good at school in general if I really pushed myself, but as someone, maybe the younger kids can identify with me in my spiel. But for someone who's primarily into animation and arty things, then like math and science, maybe besides physics, you don't really need like at all. You know, you need your basic maths to like figure out how much to tip the person that you go into the restaurant to. But they even have apps for that now, so you don't even have to, like, bother.
Right.
I don't need to learn how to, like, do complicated graphs. Like, you know, that information is just thrown out of your brain, essentially. Because I was so bad at math that, so I got, like a 2.6 in high school, but keep in mind, it was, like, in the top 20% high school, so it was a smart high school. I was just like, it's good enough. So I had a math support class, which was an extra class. So I had 2 maths, all throughout high school, except my senior year when they had, like, regular maths for, like, things that the opposite of what I'm describing, like how to do your taxes and, like, you know, just organizing a 401k, things that you would actually use that I forgot, essentially. So that class I didn't need math support for because it wasn't as challenging. And then when I got to college, I had to take 2, like, stupid maths so I could pass, like, a general test to take Math 101. And Math 101 was easier than those other 2 classes, and I got an A in Math 101. So, you know, but if it makes you feel better after you, like, check off your check in college for math, then you never have to worry about it ever again. So math is
Yeah,
bad.
when I finished my college math class, I was super stoked. I was like, oh, it's finally dead. And now it's just like, man, if you had learned math, you could be making, like, fire, like, magically right now. Like, who got the last laugh now? I'm just like, math, those damn mathematic people, they win again.
Ugh.
It's all good, though.
They did the math.
Oh, shit. That's what they mean. Oh, God. Oh, no! Okay.
Pun game too strong.
To go back to the question, in terms of, like, projects and stuff that's, like, hard or things that I want to do, the most difficult thing I have with doing 3D right now is topology. So topology, for the uninitiated, is, like, how polygons are laid out to make up your model. So when you create a polygon model, you have to, like, consciously lay out how the shapes are put together. Because, like, ideally, in a perfect world, like, if you're really good at 3D, you basically have the way the polygons are put together mimic the basic shapes of, like, muscles and, like, the human form and stuff, because, like, they'll deform the same way muscles do. So you have, like, loops of polygons. So you'll have, like, a whole circle going around the eye, so that can, like, animate and move like an eye muscle would. And then you have a loop going around a character's mouth, so it can stretch and deform like the mouth does when your jaw moves and things like that. And so there's topology is, like, the way of intentionally laying down these shapes in order to better mimic the organic form you're trying to replicate in virtual space. And this is very difficult, because you have to stitch all the shapes together in a way that makes them easy to animate. The kind of, like, traditional workflow done in like the industry right now is you start with essentially digital clay and sculpt a model. So it basically works just like clay with Control Z. You just go in there, you can use your divot brushes and, like, your bulge brushes, whatever. You just kind of, like, craft the form out of this digital clay, and you don't have to think about topology at all. It uses what's called dynamic topology. So it's just like, screw it, we'll throw as many shapes down as we need. You don't even have to think about them, just make your thing. So you can do a really crazy detailed model just by, you know, working with this clay and not thinking about, like, the underlying structure. And it looks great.
Can I do a
Huh?
Can I do a sideway? Can I do a segue
Sure.
for a second?
Segue away.
Okay, so I just wanted to explain the difference between subtractive and thinking in negative space, essentially, for art, and thinking in positive spaces. I don't, like, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm tired, but essentially, so in art school, so an exercise that you would do is, like, if you're doing still life, you're, like, drawing flowers or what the fuck, like, I don't know, flowers or fucking apples or whatever, a bowl, you know, things that they have you draw. So, you know, that's that's the opposite, essentially, where you're doing things normally, where you take a piece of chalk or charcoal or pencil or whatever you're using. Charcoal is messy, but it works really well. It looks pretty, like when you show off. It's like, look at me, I'm an artist now. Anyway, but the other way is doing things subtractively, and it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around, so that's why I was like, let me try to explain that real quick. So imagine, essentially, it's like that SpongeBob episode where you have to kind of see the form in what you're going to make, and you just have to take off what you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
So in a 2D space, like the charcoal drawing, what you would do is you would charcoal the paper and then draw your shapes basically in reverse, where you're drawing on you're subtracting charcoal with an eraser, and that's how you're forming, whatever's going on. So like if you're doing maybe a more darker setting, like that might be faster because the majority of the I want to say the majority of the picture or whatever is going to be darkly lit, and then maybe there's some light highlights depending on where the source of light is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just wanted to break that down because, like, it's when you first think of things that way, and you first start doing exercises that way, your brain kind of hurts. So to do like one of these rants without having that picture in your head, I think would be like hard to wrap your brain around. But go ahead, Tommy, continue.
Sure. Talking about sculpting. Okay. Yeah. So when you do like a digital sculpt, basically you're just focusing on the form and not thinking about the structure of it. It's just like, I don't care what my polygons look like, I just want to create this form. And so when you're done with that, you have a great looking model that you can't do anything with, because like it's probably too high poly to animate effectively. And even if you could animate it effectively, just the way the geometry is all laid out, it doesn't have any like intentional edge flow or intentional topology. It's just like shapes all over the place, making a zigzaggy mess that won't animate. So you kind of have to do it again, doing something called re-topology. So it's where you basically take your finished sculpture and you make it a second time, this time doing intentional topology, like following the shapes of like the muscle groups and stuff. So like when you want to animate this one, it's lower poly, so it's easier to animate on a computer, and it's designed to deform essentially, as opposed to just being a display piece. When you retopologize something, you're designing it to deform. So you have like circles around like the joints and stuff. So when they curl up, they kind of collapse in on each other correctly, versus like just having shapes all over the place that kind of conflict and do weird things. That's like an art in and of itself. And from what I understand, it is like the biggest stumbling block for most people trying to get into 3D, because there's just so many resources on it and so many people trying to explain it. I'm still not even close to a master of that. That is like the most difficult thing for me to do, like pretty much anybody else, is like being able to like take a form and think about it in a functional way, not just a display sort of way. In terms of like a project that's like big in scope that I want to do, I want to make a 3D action adventure game that's like an homage to a PlayStation 2 game. So like that kind of graphical style, that kind of scope. And that's a huge undertaking because those were made for millions of dollars by a team of like, 20 to 50 people. And I'm like one guy, and I have like 2 internet friends that are like, hey, maybe I'll help you do that. I'm like, that's definitely enough people to make this. But like, there are people I know, I follow on Twitter, who are like one person and are making these kinds of projects. So I know if I was a Zoomer, I'd be able to do it like by tomorrow, because the Zoomers have all the real talent. But I don't know. That's the Moonshot project. That was like my little raccoon ninja character that I've been doing on my project on Izumi. She was conceived in concert with this project. That was like a fancy sentence. Damn. That was like alliteration and everything. Yeah, write that one down. That was good. But yeah, there was a PlayStation 2 game I wanted to make with this character, because she's kind of similar to like the Jack and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper.
I was gonna say Sly Cooper. I did see her animations and stuff, and it did remind me of Sly Cooper, especially like kind of because you do. I saw you were doing like a 2D shader, which was really awesome.
Yeah, that was like one of my big breakthroughs. Like earlier this year, was figuring out how to do that. Because one of my favorite game series is Guilty Gear, and it's like a fighting game, like an anime style fighting game. And they came out with Guilty Gear Xrd a couple years ago, which is like not the third one, but like the newest one. And like they made it, the game was usually 2D. They would have 2D drawn sprites for the entire history of the game, going back to like the early 90s. But for this one, they did like cell shaded 3D models that animate just like 2D. So like if you are no animation, you know that there's like you have in 3D, most 3D animations like Pixar and stuff, they use, you know, smooth interpolation. So you have your keyframes, which is like the strongest part of your poses. So like if you're drawing a character punching, right, your keyframe would be before and like the like extension of the punch, like the beginning and end of the punch. Those would be your keyframes. And then your in betweens are like you drawing the motion, taking you from the beginning of the punch to the end. Computers can automatically create those in betweens, and that's why like Pixar animation stuff looks super smooth, because they have really strong keyframes. They have like some supporting frames that they do manually, then the computer can smoothly interpolate between the rest. So you get this really nice smooth motion that's similar to how like things in real life move, because we're moving not with keyframes. We're, you know, because we're not animated. It's all super smooth because it's real life.
We're not.
Well, it's debatable. We could be in a simulation, but as far as we know, 2D obviously is all drawings, so you have to have some limitation in your movement, and you can be crazy like Disney and animate on ones at 24 FPS, like really smooth, and try and get close to how actual like humans move. But most of the time, you're going to animate at a lower frame rate. You know, like anime is a great example where they animate anywhere from like, you know, at the high end, they'll do one sometimes, they'll get up to like 24 frames, but it's commonly done 12 or 8 frames a second, depending on the intensity of the scene. A lot of times dialogue is done at 8. Action scenes will shift between 12 and 24. You know, you can obviously change depending on the situation, but because that aesthetic is running at a lower frame rate, it has like its own character to it, right? It looks different. And as we've watched all this animation all of our lives, we kind of mentally, kind of subconsciously internalize how it looks. So when you play like a video game that's done in an anime style, like Persona, for example, shout out to anybody who knows what Persona is, but it's an anime game. They still interpolate smoothly because it's done with computers. So while the character design looks like anime, as soon as it starts moving, you're like, oh, it's a, you know, it's a 3D model, because it's moving more like a Pixar movie than it is, you know, like an anime itself. So Guilty Gear was crazy because they animated it with stepped animation like you would in 2D. So they made all the keyframes manually and didn't interpolate between them. So you look at Guilty Gear and it looks 2D, even though it's a high resolution 3D game, because they just made the shader look just like drawings, and they animated it in the exact same way a 2D animation would be, not smoothing everything out. And so this is like blowing everybody's mind, and like they've done tons of anime based games now because every company's throwing money at them, like, please just do that for Naruto, please. So you know, that was like really inspiring, because I was just like, oh, this is so cool, because like I grew up on anime, I love anime, it looks super cool, but I could never make it because I can't draw in perspective, which is like the number one thing to making your cool anime poses. So when I realized that like they were doing that, I'm like, I have to try it. And so I've done a few experiments with that, and it's coming along, and you know, as I learn more, it's going to get better and better. And it's just like, yeah, that's the goal. That's the dream. Making something like that. That's super cool.
So would you do something with like your own story, and you would write your own story and develop your own story for the game? Or would you work with another artist or another writer to help develop that kind of story?
I'm definitely, I enjoy writing a lot. So like the game already has a story that I would probably work to realize. I designed Azumi as a character to kind of be the antithesis of like how I tended to work before. In writing terms, you know, like a pantser versus a plotter. You know, a pantser is somebody who just kind of makes it up as they go, and a plotter is somebody who sits down and is like, I need an outline for everything. I need all the details. I need everything written out beforehand so I know exactly where I'm going. I was a serial plotter all of my creative life. I would get bogged down in pre-production. I have a whole Google Drive folder full of like a decade's worth of story ideas that I have completely planned out but collapsed under their own weight because they were just too ambitious. When it came to Azumi, I was like, screw it, I'm pantsing this. So I just started making things without any real plan. And just as I kept iterating on the character, her personality kind of came to me naturally, and her story came to me naturally, and I didn't plan any of that out. But now I do have a story that I want to tell with this game if it ever gets made. And I think it'll be pretty cool and pretty anime because, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I'm like one of those people that works better with other people. So I think I've been probably bothering Tommy ever since I've known him to like get a team, and he's like, "No, I like to suffer." So doing the best you can.
I mean, I a couple people now. Just saying, I'm taking.
If you want more, it's pretty easy to set up an Indeed account. People are just there.
No, but then they're like, "What, you're gonna pay me?" I'm like, "You think I have money? I'm an artist. If I wanted money, I'd have tons of other options."
Money isn't everything.
Gonna pay them in exposure.
Don't. I'm gonna kick you off the podcast right now.
I'm gonna set the exposure setting on my camera and we all take a group selfie.
I've done rants about that for those who are not here, and I'm just like, no, they're like, if you're bored anyway, and you need opportunities, like you're not like, and you're not the best at whatever you're doing anyway, but like that's like,
I'm with you. I think doing work for exposure is good in certain circumstances. Like, I had a whole rant on my Patreon where I do like bonus rants and stuff for patrons. When the whole Elon Musk
people
thing,
still pay you for that?
Look, I don't control people's wallets. I just offer and they come for it. It's just fine, whatever. But I had this I was ranting about the whole Elon Musk thing where he retweeted that art of 2B without crediting, and people were like jumping down his throat. I'm like, that artist just got exposed to like 2.3 million people for free.
Yeah.
Like, that's even if like 1% of 1% bothered to search for who that artist was who did that picture, that's like what, 23,000 new eyeballs on your work.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
I mean, I'll keep it short because we've covered this topic before, essentially like all over the place, because it's a thing that bothers me and stuff like that. But if you're gonna volunteer and do stuff, just make sure you know what you want to get out of the experience beforehand, essentially. So usually like warn people like, hey, I can't pay you, but if we finish this game, or you can if you want to practice doing this thing anyway, but this way it's going to a greater cause and not just sitting on your demo reel like forever and then never sees the light of day. So that kind of stuff, but don't be like, hey, I'll pay you when I feel like it, and then you forget about it. That's always bad. So don't manipulate people, everyone.
Exactly. I mean, the way that I've been approaching it with the handful of people I'm working with right now is that we're working on a smaller project before we tackle the big 3D game. And basically I said, if we get this game done, because we're just doing it for fun, in between other things right now, because I'm juggling 10 million projects because I can't just focus on one thing.
That's a mood.
So if we get it done, we'll kickstart it. Like, we'll figure, you'll get a percentage of whatever the Kickstarter makes, so you're paid for your work. And then when the game goes on sale, like maybe for a year or 18 months after the game comes out, you get a percentage of all sales made in that time frame. So basically, if I make money, you make money, and if I make nothing, you make nothing. We all had a good time. Is kind of where my head's at in terms of that kind of patient.
I mean,
thing.
I think that's just the way to do it with all that stuff in general. Is just kind of say hey, if you feel like you're getting something out of experience, then And the other thing is the atmosphere of working with a team will push other people to do stuff they might not normally do and might not have the resources for, essentially. Instead of just blowing something off because they don't have anyone to call, to hold them accountable, essentially, if they're just working on their own thing. Now suddenly you're in a group, and then if you don't get your shit done, then other people are gonna be mad at you. So that also can be a motivator to get off your butt and do things. But anyway, we're getting super off topic. So Tommy, what are some good 3D programs that people can get their hands on, and where are good resources that they can go to get information and classes and stuff on them?
Sure. It depends, I suppose, on what you want to do. I mean, if you're just casually curious and you want to check out 3D, it's something that could be cool. If you're always like, oh man, I like playing video games, 3D is always interested me, or I like Pixar. I would just download Blender. That's what I use. It's totally free and open source. You just go to blender.org. And it's ridiculously good. The community support for Blender is huge. Last year they released a new version called Blender 2.8, and they've updated that a few times where they completely changed the UI, made it much easier to use, added tons of new features. It's incredible. Like, I tend to use free software when I can because I'm poor, number one, and number two, I like supporting community projects like that. But like Blender is like probably like the only program that I have like actual pride in using, just because I think the community is just like so cool. And the guy who's in charge of the Blender Foundation, which is who makes the program, is just like a really chill, down to earth guy. He's just like straight up like, I'm not interested in money. That's why I give Blender away. You know, we raise funds to keep the project going. We have a strong community, and it's just like really cool, and it's really powerful, and it can do as much or as little as you want it to. I mean, any 3D package is going to be like overwhelming at the start, but Blender's come such a long way since I started using it, and 2.8 was a huge release that really, I think, equalizes it a lot. And like they also added a complete 2D workflow in there as well, so you can actually mix and match 2D and 3D right in Blender, and people have been doing some really crazy stuff with it. If you're, on the other hand, if you're like already like hardcore sold, like I want to be a 3D artist for Hollywood or for Pixar or for DreamWorks, and like that's what you want to do, like you should probably get used to industry standard tools. Like as great as Blender is, and I think like more and more studios are going to start adopting it just because like it's free and it's like getting closer and closer to you know, studio spec. Like Blender, the Blender Foundation is gunning for Autodesk right now. Like they want to just like convince everybody that like we're better and free, but like not as a meme, but like true. But for the meantime, like Autodesk does rule the roost. So like learn Maya, learn ZBrush for sculpting and stuff. Like that's like kind of like the traditional pipeline is do your sculpting in ZBrush and then move it over to Maya, retopologize it, and do all the animation and rigging and stuff in Maya. Maya's really expensive unless you're a student because they're the industry standards. They can charge like literally thousands of dollars for licenses and stuff, which I would never pay for even if I had the money. But yeah, if you want to get into the industry, that's what everyone's going to use. So learn that.
What's the difference between Blender and Maya?
I think Maya, I mean, I've never used Maya, so I can't really say like firsthand what the difference is. But from what I understand, it's just it's kind of like this, like it's like the 3D equivalent of Photoshop. You know, it's just so ubiquitous that everybody who's working professionally knows how it's used and expects you to know how it's used because like it integrates into everyone's pre-existing pipelines. There are like certain things that Maya probably does better than Blender. But in terms of like my workflow, I've never been like, man, Blender's not good enough to do X. Like it just does everything. And what's nice about Blender is because it's it's like a free program. It's kind of decided it's just going to do everything. Like if you're in Maya, like if you want to sculpt, you usually go to ZBrush, and then like ZBrush is another $1,000 license or whatever. And then when you're done with your ZBrush stuff, you bring it to Maya. Blender just added a sculpt mode, so you can just sculpt directly in Blender and then immediately move to retopologizing it also in Blender in this free program. And then you can do your animation in Blender, and then you can do your video editing, compositing in Blender, and then you can add some 2D effects on top of it in Blender, and it's just like it just does everything, which is kind of overwhelming, but like also really nice that like hobbyists and just people who want to like do their own thing have a complete software solution that costs them literally nothing. Just as like a funny aside, like when I was doing 2D like all through high school and college, like I had to use Photoshop, but I always pirated it because like I couldn't afford Photoshop. So I never paid Adobe money, but like Blender is free and I loved it so much I bought like a beanie from them, so I paid more for a free program than I did for Photoshop essentially.
It's like with Procreate for like, because I have an iPad, I wanted to invest in an iPad to be able to make it easier to take my professional work with me and in general even my
If you are a parent, and if you're a parent, no, I'm just gonna do a thing. If you're a parent and you're like, my kid loves to draw, get them a fucking iPad just like now, please.
Because you know
like,
what you can do, the
don't
easiest
be my
$10,
parents.
easiest and best $10 you'll ever spend on an iPad is on Procreate.
It's so
because Lordy, it comes with so much, and each update brings you that much more. Plus, it's like you pay once and that's it. You never have to pay for it again. And only if you want to like add maybe custom brushes that somebody developed, and that costs a couple more bucks. I mean, it's more than worth it considering how much Adobe normally costs. So, just saying.
Yeah, definitely worth. I will third that. As a proud Procreate user, it is absolutely worth it.
You got to buy the iPad first, obviously. But you know, if you're like, there's so many artists that just buy iPads because they're using Procreate, and that's it. You know.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that was a huge selling point for me to get one in the first place.
It's the only reason I bought one.
And plus, also get
too.
one of those paper-like covers. There's a bunch of different kinds of them. All of them trying to be paper-like. If you want to buy from the original source, you can obviously go to the website and buy it. But you can get like 1-pack, 2-packs, all that kind of stuff. Paper-like is basically a screen protector for your iPad that fits perfectly over your screen, and it has a grain to it. So that way when you're drawing over it with your Apple Pencil, which you should get if you're gonna get any Apple Pencil. Sorry, you're gonna have to shell out the $115 or whatever to get the Apple II.
It's like $400 for everything. You know, $300, $400 for everything, the pencil and the
so it's like
but
itself. The pencil, I mean, you want to make sure that it actually freaking works with the iPad, so you're probably going to have to get the official Apple II pencil, especially because Apple One pencil doesn't work on anything that's like a newer generation iPad. Just the more you know. Anyway, but to get the paper like texture on there, oh my gosh, it's a dream to put one on. And for me, I draw kind of hard because I press really hard with my pencil, just out of bad habit, and I try to not, but it can wear down the grain a little bit, and I went through mine in like 7 or 8 months. But it's inexpensive to replace them anyway. So it's probably better to, like, once you try one out, then you can get like a multi-pack or something later down the line. And it's easy to replace, but I mean, it provides that resistance that if you like drawing with pencil and paper, you get that feeling when you draw it on an iPad when you have that protector on, and it's absolutely amazing. Anyway, I'm sorry, this is not a 3D thing, but just important to know, especially for people who are looking for inexpensive alternatives to maybe Adobe products or anything else like that.
I'm down with Autodesk, down with Adobe. Death to all of them. Anybody talking about robbing Adobe of an extra dollar gets an A+ in my book. Ever since they all switched to their subscription service stuff, I'm just like, nope. If you're on the desktop, get Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo. They're like Photoshop and Illustrator, but they're $50 once you own them. So instead of 1 month of Creative Cloud, you can own it forever. I bought it in 2014 when it came out on the Mac. It's now on Windows as well. Fantastic, just as good as Photoshop. Has a lot of interesting features. Totally worth it. I use that all the time for like making thumbnails and doing like design work and just drafting stuff out on the computer. Super good.
Yeah. So Tommy, like, maybe talk about the resources if they want to learn how to use Blender that might be free. Like, so I imagine you said a community, so I'm sure there's a bunch of like people with YouTube videos. I don't know, like, tell me about that.
I actually have a crappy little vlog on my YouTube channel talking about where you should go to learn Blender, because like somebody asked me this a month or 2 ago. But there's like the pipeline I would recommend if you want to learn Blender and you're like totally new to it is I would go on YouTube and I would search Andrew Price donut tutorial. There's like this like very popular tutorial that Andrew Price does. He's like a Blender guy who does like YouTube videos and stuff on how to make a realistic donut in Blender. It's like takes you through the entire process of like setting up Blender and like learning how to do the basics, and teaches you just like all these really good things. So by the time you're done, you have a model that looks really good, and you've learned kind of the whole basic blocks of how the program works. If you want to like really dive deep and learn everything about Blender, I'd recommend getting a CG Cookie subscription. It's like $100 a year, but they have like professional level classes that go over everything from beginner to super advanced level. I've been going through courses on there on and off forever. It's really, really good stuff. I'm going through some of their retopology stuff right now because I need it really bad. They also have concept art cookie, which is included subscription, so you can do like concept art in 2D. So if you are a 3D guy and you want to get your concept art and 2D work up to par, they have that. If you want to take your Blender skills and move them into game design, they have a whole Unity program as well. So you can, and including like cross-discipline things. So they have these things called learning flows. So instead of just like looking at a big list of courses, they have like, okay, if you want to do this, here's like a sequence of courses start to finish that'll take you from the beginnings of how to do this thing all the way to the end. And they have interdisciplinary stuff like if you want to make games, we'll start with teaching you how to use Blender to make some game level models, and then from there we'll show you how to import these models into Unity and start doing stuff with them as C# coding and stuff. So like it's a really well done site, and the guy who started it did YouTube tutorials for a while that I used to watch, and then he founded this site and like got a bunch of other people involved. Now they're like the premier place to learn Blender and like a lot of these other disciplines, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. And then if you just kind of want like some quick and easy stuff, there's a guy on YouTube called Royal Skies LLC. He's a Blender artist and game designer, and he does tutorials in under 2 minutes. He just cuts out all the fat and it's just like, hey, you want to learn this? Boom, 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 done.
Wow.
Like they're intermediate like videos. You have to understand how Blender works and things like that already. But like if you're somebody like me who's been using the program for a little while and you're like you know the basics and you just like, I want to learn something new. I want to know how to do this. Like in 2 minutes you'll go from like how to like oh, and you're done. So he kind of like inspired a bunch of copycats. There's like 5 or 6 different people who make videos like in that style now, but his was the first, his was the best. Super recommended just for like quick learning new skills. You know, like every couple days you can just learn something new while you're having your cup of coffee. Like before you've even finished half of it, you know a new Blender technique. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
I think my last question, unless Lauren has more questions, is what kind of PC setup would you recommend to run all this stuff without any issues?
Okay. I mean, I did all my low poly stuff when I started on like a Surface Pro 3 Core i3. So like you don't need a super powerful computer to get started if you just want to do the basics, if you want to do low poly and things like that. If you want some headroom, I would recommend, you know, a dedicated graphics card is kind of a must. I'd recommend an NVIDIA graphics card, especially if you're using Blender, because the Cycles render engine, which is like they have 2 engine rendering systems, which is just kind of like you take your work in progress thing and it spits out like a finished product. You know, like when you watch a Pixar movie that's been rendered out using, I think RenderMan is their like proprietary one that they have. But rendering is like probably the most taxing thing that you do because it's just like taking your model, like making it a finished product, and it's like calculating all the lighting and all the shading and stuff like that. So NVIDIA cards have this thing called CUDA, which is just like a graphics accelerator sort of thing. Doesn't really matter exactly how the tech works, especially because I don't know how it actually works. I'm not that smart. But basically, you can use your graphics card to do all that rendering, and NVIDIA's CUDA stuff works way faster than AMD's, which is the other major graphics card provider, in my experience. So me being me, I have an AMD card, and it's slow and crashes my computer because it's not good enough to use Cycles. So I do all my work in Eevee, which is their real-time renderer, which kind of works like a video game render would, whereas Cycles is more like a Pixar movie kind of renderer. So like Eevee is faster, but it doesn't do like real-time like light calculation and stuff. So there's like certain features it can't do. So you can run Eevee on like a potato, it's fine. But if you want to use Cycles and get like the pretty like super magic god ray powers, like that's when you're going to want to get a dedicated graphics card. It doesn't have to be an expensive one. Like right now, as of this recording, like a 1650, the GTX 1650 is like I think like $150 card. That'll be fine. Get like a Core i5 or a Ryzen 5 processor. That'll be more than enough. I'd recommend at least 16 gigs of RAM just to give you some overhead, and an SSD so you get that snappy disk access. And that's it. The whole thing will run you maybe like $600 if you build it, maybe somewhere closer to $800 if you want to buy it pre-built, and you'll be off to the races.
I totally understood all of that. Do you have any more questions, Lauren?
I guess what we like to close out with is just what we want to hear from our guests every time is if you have any advice for anybody who wants to become a 3D artist or is already a 3D artist and maybe is just starting and just wants to know where to go next.
Sure. I think the most important thing is like not selling yourself short. I in 2006, and I was still in high school, there was this guy who I'm still a huge fan of, M. Strange. He got featured on YouTube back when the YouTube feature page existed and mattered, for a trailer for an animated movie he was working on called We Are the Strange. And it was a fully done feature film he did by himself. He did 2 more feature films by himself after that. Guy's a god. It's probably why I'm so hung up on wanting to be an autodidact, because that's what he does, and it's the coolest thing in the world.
But does he like have a life?
No. No, he does not have a life, and he likes it that way, I guess. So you pick and choose your battles.
The things you trade off, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Like he romanticizes that too. He's like, oh, my friends are going to the bar. I didn't care about copulating with women. I would go home and I would work on my movie, and like he would use those words. It's funny. He's a great guy. But I've talked to him a couple times. He's like a badass. But he did this whole 3D animated movie, and like in high school, I was like, oh, this is so cool. I want to learn how to do 3D. And then I tried, and I was like, this is too hard, and I quit because I was like, I'm too dumb. I can't do it. And for like 12 years, I just told myself I was too dumb. And then one day I was like, screw this, I'm gonna do it. And I did, and I can do 3D now, and it's like getting better all the time. And now I'm doing like game design, which I told myself in high school as well. I'm too dumb, I can't make games, and now I'm making games. And 3D printing is a new thing that I was like, oh, I'm too dumb, I can't do 3D printing, that's for smart people. And now I'm doing like 3D like printouts of like my characters that used to just exist in the computer. So like we live in the age of the internet now. Everybody has access to literally the entirety of human knowledge and experience. And there are people who have natural talent who can just click with things. I'm not one of those people. I've never had that. The only thing I'm naturally good at is procrastinating. So everything else has just been beating my face against the wall, trying to learn something, and just like being too tenacious to let it go.
That's a mood.
And if you start something and it's really hard, that's normal. Like I would always tell myself, oh, if I can't like magically get it, then I'm a loser. Because in high school, I was surrounded, like my 2 best friends were both like really gifted savant people. My 2 friends were like, one of them was like a programmer at 15, could draw photorealistically without even breaking a sweat. Straight A student, like the like smartest person I've ever met in my life. And my other like best friend was like really good at photography. His parents just gave him everything he ever wanted, so he had like every tool and every toy you could ever possibly want. Like these are the people I hung out with. So like to me that was normal. And here was me, a scrub who like his only skill was like getting S rank combos in Devil May Cry on PS2, and had no talent at all. So like when I tried to do something and it didn't magically come to me, like the only other people I had social contact with were, my assumption was like, I'm not good enough. But I was just normal and I was surrounded by freaks. So if
Are you still
suck
friends
at
with
something,
these people?
yeah.
That's good.
So like I didn't let that ruin my friendship with them or anything. It's just like clearly we're starting off on a different foot,
Yeah.
And like the funny thing is like one of those friends now, like he has all these resources but barely does anything with them. Meanwhile, like I'm slowly climbing my way up the ladder, trying to like get a little bit better every day. So like it's just like social media makes it really difficult to let yourself be shitty at something for a while, because the algorithms make the cream of the crop rise to the top, and like it just, you're competing now on a stage that's global. And so the top 5% of the entire world is like thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and that's what you see every day. You're like, that's normal. Basically, my childhood is at scale. You're just surrounded by the best, like outstanding examples of your craft, that it seems like the norm. But like for every like Sakimi chan out there's a bazillion people like me who are just like smashing crayons against a piece of paper, like trying their damnedest and like slowly getting better one day at a time. So if you boot up a program or you put a pencil to paper, you put fingers to keys, whatever your inclinations are, and you're just like, this is garbage. It's like Jake said, sucking at something's first step to being sort of good at something. So just keep trucking, keep making it happen, and do it.
Just do it.
Nike product placement. Done. I did it. I'm getting my paycheck as soon as we're done.
I'm not a scrub anymore, Mom. Ugh.
I did it.
No more hanging out the passenger side of your best friend's ride.
Oh, no. That's what I do every day.
Oh my god.
Oh god. Okay, so
that's a song
anyway,
reference. For people who don't know that, that's a song reference to Scrubs
for you
by
you singers out
TLC.
there?
For you non-90s kids that are not in the
Yeah.
loop.
You'll hear it on TikTok at some point, I'm sure.
Bastille did a cover of it. That's
and then
really neat.
everybody goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's a new song."
But anyway, go ahead, Lauren. Do the. Oh, Tommy, where can people find your shit?
Yeah, I was gonna say plug.
Go to @TommyOliverSays on Twitter, patreon.com/polystation2, where you can listen to all my bonus rants if you, for some reason, want to do that. I don't understand people. And YouTube, just Tommy Oliver 3D. I don't upload there very often, but when I do, they're usually half-ass vlogs that could have been a lot better if I actually cared about videos, but I don't.
Do you still get horse people commenting on your vlogs every once in a while? Or
every once in a while, I get somebody saying, "Where the fuck is Camelot Wedding?" And I'm like, I don't know. Ask Anthony.
It's been 84 years.
Yeah, can never really leave. No one's ever really gone.
oh my god. Well, on that depressing note, I guess. So if you're new to the podcast, we're like 20-ish episodes in, so please watch the rest or listen to the rest of them. If you really want to watch them, you can go on YouTube and just like glue your brain to the loop that we have if you want to watch them, because that's what we have.
Like, comment, subscribe. Like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah, and subscribe to the main channel, which is like I'm pushing really hard to build the main channel, and we're like gaining traffic again, and I had to tell all my friends, like, look guys, we're getting like subscribers again. Yay! So ideally I'd like to keep that up, at least for my self-esteem. So, if you like animation, and ponies every once in a while, someone asks me, like, everyone always finds me and they're just like, I used to watch your stuff. Do you still do brony stuff? And I'm just like, now on weekends and holidays, but every other stuff. We have some cool stuff.
KP, where's my episode by episode breakdown of Pony Life? It's been like 3 weeks.
Fucking goddamn. No, Tommy, that's like a whole, it's a whole thing. There's a whole thing where I'll keep it brief because I'm going to cover it like in depthly, but Peter New replaced John Delancey as Discord, and I'm so mad. I cried.
Pony Life's got that budget constraints, dude. They can't bring in the A-list talent anymore. They got to keep it local.
You did see the animation. I see some things never truly change over Pony. Did you see that there was one shot from Pony Life where I guess when Fluttershy's gotten huge and she yells at the team, and the team's being blown back by her scream or whatever. And that one split-second shot as you're seeing them trying to brace against the wind and being blown away, is that all of a sudden they all have wings. All of their bodies suddenly have wings for this one shot. I'm like, they weren't there before, and here they are now for the split second. Okay.
It just wouldn't be My Little Pony without some unfortunate puppet issues and not hiding all the layers properly.
Sudden alicorn.
But yeah, if you wanna sell your soul, I guess you can watch some Pony Life stuff. But
haven't seen it.
But yeah, we otherwise have episodes on.
Did you even finish the series, Tommy? Sorry to interrupt, Lauren.
No, it's cool.
No, I missed like 3 seasons or something, but I watched the finale just because.
It was okay. I like
it was. Did they have to give all of them bags under their eyes when they got older? Just
that was gross. No, I mean like the rest of it, It was
all right.
No, there's actually people were
ponies characters get older, guys. I don't have as much of an issue with that, but whatever.
But they have
okay.
fur. You don't see bags under your eyes through fur.
It's very short fur.
It don't make no sense. And it'll look gross. It's the same thing in Justice League, the first season of Justice League, when they gave Superman these like weird like things under his eyes that made him look like he was a skull. And by season 3, they took them out because they realized, hey, that was a terrible decision. These little things, they annoy me. These are the things I notice in animation, and I don't know why.
Yeah, people were so like frustrated with the eyes that there were edits where people like mask out the eyes in all the shots. But you know, like people are like, the parents don't have any eyes and just like eye bags, and I'm like,
imagine caring that much. I'm complaining about it on a podcast, and even I don't care that much. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, what kind of people care about so much about the details in animation? It's disgusting.
Animation's just for kids. Who cares?
Isn't it just like little kids that make the stuff anyway?
Yeah.
And then you just push a button and then it's done, right? Duh.
You're gonna tell me fans have gone in and they've digitally edited out the bags under the characters' eyes, but they're not gonna go in and like digitally undo all the animation errors? Come on, guys.
I don't know. I guess if everyone harasses Tommy to watch the rest of the horse show, we'll get him back or something. I don't know. So there's your homework. Yeah. So make sure.
But yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah. Make sure you tune in every week. Every Wednesday we aim to have our. I'm gonna go through the whole spiel. Is every Wednesday in the morning hours we usually have our episode up on all your favorite little podcast streaming services. And then by the evening, we usually have evening, we usually have the YouTube link up as well. So that way you have some nice little visuals to look at while you listen to the episode. So we basically just have like a visualizer kind of version. Yeah, so stay tuned every week. We try to stay as on schedule as possible. But you know,
Rip me.
Life.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but thanks to everybody that's tuned in for this, and thank you, Tommy, for joining us. It was really fun having you on here tonight.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Just subscribe everywhere. We work really hard. I work so hard.
Hit that bell for notifications.
I just want to take a nap. I saw a comment today where they're just like, I like the podcast better than the main channel. I'm like, no, you will like both equally.
There is no such thing as one over the other. When you say you like the podcast, you're saying you like everything. That is
the podcast is
That's
such
just what happens.
A minimal effort compared to the main stuff. But go ahead, Tommy.
The audience reception is always inversely proportional to the amount of effort you put in. This is just a law of the internet.
It's just like anytime somebody makes like a super detailed picture, and they're like, look, this took me several hours to paint, and it gets like 2 likes. But then you throw together a meme with like a cheap meme with a screenshot and a couple lines of text, and suddenly, boom, thousands of likes and retweets.
I was told
I don't
hard work pays off. The internet has proven me wrong. Capitalism lied to me.
Not gonna lie, one of my oldest pieces on my DeviantArt account, I think for a while it was my most liked, and I think it was like my most liked post that I had on my DeviantArt, and it was literally something that took me not even a minute to throw together. It was a screenshot from a Jonas Brothers video that had like Microsoft Paint text laid over it. I just typed in 2 seconds and just threw it up there and posted it. High school me was very cringy. Who wasn't cringy in high school though?
Exactly.
But I'm like, I still kept getting likes on that. I'm like, why? It's been like 12 years.
These are our standards.
I don't understand the internet. It's very strange. It's a very weird thing.
Well, anyway.
That's it. It's
so
over.
For everybody.
Go home. We're done now.
Yeah, you're still here? It's over. Go home.
You're already home because COVID. Do. All right.
Yeah, so just go to the other room then.
Go to bed.
Go take a shower. Go take a shower. Go eat a healthy meal if you haven't already. Exercise. Take care of yourselves and each other. Is that not what Jerry Springer used to say at the end of shows? Take care of yourselves. And
Okay,
each other, or
we
something.
we can end it. Okay, bye everyone. Get out.
This is an important question. We need to get to the
Thanks
bottom
for joining.
of it.
Take care, everybody, and thanks for joining us for our Ramble Fest. And we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to Animation Kimmunication on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider. We are really hoping this show makes a difference in how people view animation and media, as well as giving and providing advice for people all over the world who like or want to join the animation or media industry. If you liked what you heard, please remember to subscribe and rate those 5 stars, as well as tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our main YouTube channel, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, and turn those notifications on. My name is Scribbler, and you have been listening to Animation Kimmunication.